All right, good afternoon, everyone. We had a wonderful session with our eminent panelist just now, and it's, the theme that I was hearing and is the theme that I'll talk about, which is what we call the integration mindset, right? So today what I'll talk about is, but it's a very difficult journey, if you will, which is how to AI-fy an organization, how to build an AI-first company, how to AI-fy a country, right? And that is the struggle that we are all dealing with. So today I'll talk about three big themes, and hopefully some of them will resonate with you. The first is, I want to talk about AI not as an afterthought of an existing system, but what does AI first mean? So we'll talk about that. Second, we have all seen AI strategy papers, right? India has a strategy paper, every company has a strategy paper on AI. But a strategy paper is not translating into an AI platform. So what does that journey look like? And the third thing I'll talk about is, a collection of use cases does not give you an operating system for something. So let me give you an example. If you think about the way electricity works today, imagine if we had built use cases for electricity only. If we had built a bulb or a switch or a socket or a wire, would we ever have electricity? And that is the question we have to think about, which is electrification of a country is like the AIification of a country, and we need to think both bottom up and top down to get there, right? So we'll talk about some of these themes. Now, these are my last I believe these are the last 4 digital platforms the world is going to build. The first one is the life operating system. This is like the super app for everyone, right? And we'll talk about that. The second is the work operating system. Now think about how our farmers, our teachers, our lawyers, all these people are working today. They're all using a collection of generic products to lead their daily life, right? So if you think about, we all use calendar and email and WhatsApp groups and ChatGPT and Excel spreadsheet. But nobody has built a very streamlined product just for lawyers, just for farmers, just for teachers, just for principals. So that is what I call the work operating system, and the super app for work, one for every profession. That is a very big idea. If you're an entrepreneur looking for big ideas, these are the 4 big ideas. The next is what I call a domain operating system, and we'll spend some time on that. And I'll tell you why this is an important area. And finally, I'll talk about AI operating system, which is more like an integration of producers of AI with the consumers of AI, right? So the theme in all 4 is integration, 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 right? So let's talk about the life operating system. And this is not something that is coming in the future. This is already here. If you look at all these things, right? Tata Neo, Alexa Plus, our version of WhatsApp, Grab, Atlas, Comet, they seem like they are either browsers or chat windows or apps, but they're all heading towards something called a super app. So super app is the final frontier in a B2C product. Whoever is going to build that first is going to be the next Google of the world. And Elon Musk recently announced he wants to build an everything app. So now Elon Musk has announced, so you can see where this world is going. So what is the super app, if you will? Is, it does everything for everyone in all languages, in all modalities, in a single place, right? So today, if you think about how many apps you have in your phone, you have some apps for food, some apps for media, some apps for travel, some apps for booking tickets. And it's a very broken ecosystem. It's not integrated for you. And the world is now ready for integration, right? So we know how to do commute well. We know how to do food delivery well. We know how to do YouTube and Netflix well. But we are doing them separately. Now the time has come to integrate. So we obviously need bottom-up startups to keep doing individual things, but we also need top-down startups to start thinking about integrating life experiences of people into a super app. Now, what does that look like? So imagine you're in office and you say, hey, I want to go home. Today, what do? You open 3 apps, Rapido, Ola, Uber. You check prices, you look at things, ETA versus price, and you make a decision. But imagine you just have to say, I want to go home, or the app can suggest that, hey, you should go home, and you say 30 minutes, and everything should just happen, right? It realizes that it's a commute agent, and it has to know all your needs, all your parameters, where do you live, what kind of cabs you like. It should send that information automatically to all the partner ecosystems and get their input and connect the dots and book the final ride, right? You should not have to deal with the chores of booking an app or ordering a pizza or booking an airline and go through all these hundreds of apps that we are talking about, right? So there is a meta workflow which is true for all these things, right? You have to trigger a workflow, you have to enrich the workflow with additional information, you have to explore options, you have to optimize the best option for this user and this context, you have to execute, and then you have to learn from feedback, right? So how do we think of this meta workflow? And I'll come back to this again towards the end of the slide. Another example I want to give you, Super App is not just a collection of all apps in one place. It's not a UI game that everything is together. It's a lot more than that. And this is a real life experience which triggered me 5-10 years ago about thinking about super apps. So imagine you are interested in a certain artist on YouTube, right? So now YouTube knows that this person, Shailesh Kumar, is following this artist, and Book My Show knows that this person is performing in my city. And today what is happening? YouTube and Book My Show don't talk to each other. They are sitting next to each other on your phone, but they don't talk to each other. So there is no integration happening, right? And I would miss that show, although YouTube knows everything about my liking for this artist. This is what a real super app is. It's an integration of multiple domains together. Another example, if you order pizza today on Swiggy, Zomato, it doesn't really connect to your health apps and say, what is your cholesterol? But now imagine a super app can say, hey, you are saying, hey, I'm hungry, get me my favorite pizza. And first it consults your health ecosystem and says, no, you can't have pizza, you should have salad today, right? And this cross integration is what a real super app can do. And if we start thinking about integration mindset, these are the examples. Another example could be, now think about integration between people. So after this conversation, what do? We spend 1 hour negotiating which movie, what time, which theater. And now imagine if our super apps start to talk to each other and say, what are your preferences, what kind of movies you like, where do you live and work, what is your calendar and all that. And it does the negotiation and figure out what is the best alternative. And by the time you hang up your phone, it has already booked your tickets and your cabs. That is the new possibility. So the point I'm trying to make is the future of technology is integration now, not building another, Ola company or another, Swiggy company, but how do you integrate all of them into a single super app? So this is one theme that I wanted to talk about. The second theme is, so that is on the B2C side, right? This is the last product in the B2C side, whoever will build that. The last product in the B2B side, if you will, is what I call a domain operating system. So if you think about how products have evolved, right? We started with physical products that have very limited intelligence, programmed intelligence. Then last 20 years, we invented search engines and recommendation engines, which learned over time by our feedback, right? So that is what we call crowdsourced intelligence. And where we are going next is what I call emergent intelligence. So think of a whole city as a product. Think of Amazon as a product. Think of, retail or telecom network as a product. And these are the products of the future. And what role can we do? Today we are building point solutions for complex systems. So somebody is building one missile or one part of a missile for a complex system is one kind of a bottom-up company. But somebody who is integrating all these existing things together, sort of building a grid for the electricity, is a different kind of a game we can play. So what is the complex system? These are all complex systems, right? And when we think about building complex systems, we are not ready. Our IT thinking is not ready. Our AI thinking is not ready to say, how do we build an operating system for agriculture? What does it even mean? How do we think about an operating system for healthcare? So we know what is an operating system for a device or a cloud, but these are also very complex systems and they deserve that kind of a thought process, which is, what does it mean to build an operating system for this? Today, they are all broken, right? Somebody is doing this, somebody is doing that. Today, there are thousands of startups in each domain doing their own little things, like building a bulb and a socket and a wire and a thing, but nobody is coming together. And that is what will take us forward, coming together of all the startups in a coherent manner. And that is when we'll reach the electricity level maturity in our world. Now, to build a complex system, you need to think about systems and workflows, right? So these are the systems typically in any domain, right? If you think about the data coming in, what are the different types of data coming in, what are you storing, what are your AI models you are going to need, what are your system of interactions with people, right? Building a farmer app or a drone based camera. These are all systems, system of operations and system of integration. So how do we think about systems that bring a complex system together, right? Like in an airline industry, the systems are, how do you fuel an aircraft? How do you train a pilot? How do you do airport security? All these systems have to come together to create an airline ecosystem. So what does that system thinking mean in domain after domain after domain is something we want to think about. A few months ago, I was with the Western Command who did the Operation Sindoor, and we were talking about what are the systems in the military domain. It's a very, very complex system. What we saw today was manufacturing for military, but the operations of military is even more complex, right? So unless it is all integrated, left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Another way of looking at any complex system is workflows. So what is the workflow in an airline industry, if you will, is a passenger. A passenger uses all the different systems to get the journey done, right? And that is a workflow mindset. So what I've done is now we have a framework where we can break down any domain into the systems and workflows, and we can integrate all of this together to create an operating system for that domain. So my call to entrepreneurs is, yes, you can keep thinking about improving a point solution forever, but now we can also start thinking about integrating and building domain operating systems as the new thing. Right. Sorry, this is not coming up correctly. So now imagine that, in the security world, for example, you have cameras, you have videos, actions can be detected, and now harmful and normal actions can be detected, and alarms can be raised, right? Why is this not happening? Why is still crime against women happening all the time, in spite of all the cameras? The reason is we never thought about integration. We thought about camera as a separate company, face detection as a separate company, action detection as a separate company. Nobody is integrating them. And we are keep funding bottom-up companies after companies, but nobody is building a grid that says, we can do face detection, alert authorities and all that. So one of the mindsets we want to bring is, how do you think about automation as a mindset? Are the system of sensors, are all the sensors necessary for agriculture? And the system of operations is what we deliver. So you understand that a workflow is made up of things from different systems. And this is how we will create workflows after workflows in every domain and integrate all the great work that each of the companies is doing, right? Another example, if you think about, for example, a farmer takes a picture of the crop. One AI startup says, what is the crop stage? Another AI startup says, what is the stress level? Another AI startup says, I want to do irrigation advisory. Another AI startup says, I want to control the tube wells. And another AI startup says, I want to build fertilizer advisory and so on, and pesticide advisory. So the problem is not that we don't have all the orange boxes. We have all the orange boxes, but we have not integrated them. And if we could integrate them, we have reimagined how agriculture should happen. Because now the farmer doesn't even have to take a picture. There are 3 drones in every village. They're taking the picture, they're sending information, and AI is telling the other drones what to do, right? So the labor shortage, all that goes away, productivity goes up, right? So what I'm trying to say is we have the building blocks among different startups doing different things. We don't have the grid in which everything can be put together. So that's what I believe the next 10 years will be. We'll think about integration and not just think about, accuracy. Another example of this is healthcare, right? So today, most of India does not have good healthcare doctors, right? We live in a very good city. We can have second opinion, third opinion, but tier 3 India doesn't have enough doctors. So now imagine we have built a preclinical diagnosis system, and preclinical diagnosis is one set of startups. That alone is not enough, and there is a doctor oversight. Now imagine if there is an emergency, we have to integrate a diagnosis system with the emergency system of the local area. We have to integrate it with the investigation and labs. We have to integrate with appointments and in-person and medicine systems, right? So you see, again, the theme is we have built the building blocks in all domains, healthcare, education, agriculture, but we are now ready to integrate all them into an operating system. And the reason we are not able to integrate is lack of standards, right? If you think about 4G, 5G, why does it work? We have standardized, so anybody can build those. So interoperability is the real problem to be solved. Intelligence is already a solved problem in most domains. Yeah. Uh, Healthcare, imagine again initial symptoms you have. You have an AI that gives you the preclinical diagnosis, top 5 diseases, and doctor looks at that. Then, AI suggests what are the investigation. You upload the results, AI looks at the results, gives you the final diagnosis, doctors looks at that. AI generates a prescription, doctors looks at that, and then you get feedback, right? This is also a workflow thinking. Now, this is different than before because behind every orange box, an AI box, there is a green box, which is a human doctor box. And this is what we call augmented intelligence. How do we bring experts and AI together so we work together as a team instead of one fearing the other, right? And the idea here is that the role of the human in the next 20 years is going to shift from a creator to a curator. A human doctor will never do the first diagnosis, AI will do. A human pathologist will not look at the blood reports and AI will do. And all that, they will look at it from a curation perspective, make sure everything is right. So that is the new world. This is true for doctors, pathologists, software engineers, music directors, actors. Everybody is going to go through this kind of a transition as we go along, right? So keep this in mind that we are building a curator economy now. Creator economy is handed over to AI, right? Final slide, I'll talk about ecosystem thinking. Now, if I think about retail as a complex system, some of you may be working in building a great recommendation engine or a demand forecasting engine or a supply optimization engine. But if I think about an operating system of retail and list down what are the top workflows in retail, right? How do you collect orders? How do you build demand forecasting models? How do you deliver products? How do you build profile from the same order? And how do you do supply optimization? Now, this is the new skill that we are teaching in ISP and the new world, where people who understand digital technologies, data, AI, and compute, and people who understand domain like retail have to come together to create diagrams like this, domain after domain after domain, right? So now this can be done in all domains. Whatever is your favorite domain, we need to be able to think and say, look, system of operations is there, system of intelligence is there, system of records is there. Today we think of them as separate. I want to buy this database stack. I want to buy this AI stack. I want to buy, this delivery company. We are broken in our thinking, and that's why we are creating, broken systems in the back and all that. Now, and this is the new mindset I want to develop in our next generation entrepreneurs, technical students, and business students that think about operating systems in any domain and think about how will you create them, and you cannot do it in your own silos, right? Obviously, all this leads to, well, LLM and agentic can do it. So, why LLM and agentic will not be able to do it, and why we are wasting time. They are not ready. Recently, we saw an interview by Karapati who said, this is not a decade, this is not a year of agent, this is a decade of agent. So we are still a decade away from agents becoming commonplace. So these are my thoughts on why agentic is not ready to do all this yet. One is, a lot of times agentic is very useful to discover a new workflow or a new thing, right? A new process, do reasoning over 5 things. But 99% of the workflows in most domains are already known. We don't have to discover them again and again every time somebody does a prompt. So therefore, we don't need to take an expensive route of agentic. We can actually build these in a different way, right? Traditional IT. Second, we don't want probabilistic workflows. We want deterministic workflows. Imagine if an Ola car has to come, that car has to come. It is not something probabilistic, right? Agents are still very probabilistic. They propagate the error from one node to the other. So agents are not ready until they become deterministic in nature. Third is, I think a lot of systems are built not for human productivity in the future, but they will be built for automation, right? So we are heading towards automation, the way we have achieved automation in the world of electricity, for example. So the idea is, imagine that we do Ola like this, that somebody does a prompt and says allocate cabs to people. Or somebody does a prompt and say, change electricity in this place. This is not how real world systems work. There is no human in the loop in majority of the cases. We don't run complex systems with humans in the loop, right? So therefore, we don't need LLMs and natural language. We need events that can talk to other events and functions directly, right? So, and finally, the cost is still very prohibitive. There are estimates that said today we have spent $500 billion in AI companies and made only $35 billion. And this gap is going to continue to grow. By 2030, this will be $800 billion of gap between what the cost of AI is and what the benefit is. So I think the current way we are doing AI, getting FOMO'd by the Western ideas, is too expensive, right? And we need to rethink, sit down together, think about domains, think about our digital technologies, and how do we create operating systems out of that. Yeah. Thank you for your time, and that's all.